interesting new developments here. We got the NV4500 slave disassembled. So here's the release bearing and the sleeve it rides on. And then there's just a snap ring here that comes out. This is conveniently the same diameter as this. And then the idea of this is just a little bit, well, it's probably the same, but the lead in on this guy pilots it nicely. So whenever you set it like I had it, uh-oh, come on hand, like this, it holds everything perfectly centered around the 95 shaft. And then looking down inside of here, you can see the holes are not quite there. But if I move this guy over a little bit, I can hit that one. And then this side, it's considerably more off. Flashlight. So I'll bring a light in here. You can see it's pretty off. The hole's over there. So I might try to move this hole over some too and see what I can do. If not, I might have a machine shop build me an adapter plate. But this is, come on. I suppose I should preface with what I got here. This is the dmax slave. This is my 95 input shaft bearing retainer. This is the new style input shaft bearing retainer. So the reason that you can't just swap these is because this is a different size diameter than the old one, and the bolt holes are considerably larger as well. So somebody once turned this down, milled these in, and then they had to do something with the seat of this because it's a different depth than the old style where the bearing is. So they had to shim it out or cut it back, one of the two, to make it fit. I don't know. I don't have a machine shop, so I'm trying to limit the amount of machine work I have to do. I'm sure I could take that and say make these two match, but I don't know. If I can just have them build an adapter plate to hold this guy, check this out. With these two sitting side by side, let's get rid of this greasy old fork. The bottoms of them, where they would sit on the face of the case, are pretty close to the same height. With, oh boy, with this guy here, it's got, let me brace my arm. It's got a couple thousandths of movement. Oh, let me go to a bolt hole. Hang on. Stupid hose is kind of annoying. So looking at this bolt hole, you can see how much play you got. So I figure that's what I got to work with on this one. But if I put this one on here, then take my precision straight edge across. Look at that. After I put the release bearing on, they're exactly level. So those put the release bearing at the exact same height on both of them. So I think that's going to work if I don't have to shim out for the pressure plate on my bell housing. And then I don't have to change trannies or bell housings. We'll just roll with it. So we'll see what this comes up with. Got a couple more updates for you tonight, and then we're getting ready to shut her down. So here's the plan. I got 2 bolts Uh-oh. 1.5 bolts. We go into here. Then I got 2 studs, just all thread and nuts. Put them on. Then we got an adapter plate. It's a nice snug fit in there too. I tested it fitted on the tranny once already. Come on. There you go. Then we got this bad boy. He's gonna sit clocked something like that. Now all I gotta do is clearance that so that this thing will sit down on the plate nice and good. And I may put a spacer plate in here too, because this has an indent. If I just shim that so that it's sitting flat on there instead of bearing on the outside, I don't know if I can take that or not. So I think that's the plan going forward. I test fit everything on the tranny with the bell housing, and this bad boy here is going to stick right out through the old slave hole. It's going to sit right like that. So I think this is going to work. That means I can bolt my Duramax pressure plate and GM friction disc with the smaller shaft and Duramax flywheel. For the flywheel bolts, I just went to Ace and bought 6 M10 by 150 by 25 millimeter long flange heads. I think them are gonna work. We'll see. So I don't know. Gives me the warm and fuzzies that this is actually gonna go together, and I won't have to buy a transmission. If that works, then I'll just buy the 1.25" GM input shaft. Roll with that guy for a little bit. There's still one more hurdle we gotta get through, and that is this bell housing clearing the Duramax flywheel and pressure plate. So the next step is to pull this guy off the stand, turn him around and support him so that I have access to all my bell housing bolts, and then we'll throw the flywheel on it, pressure plate, and see what the bell housing does. One step closer. Oh yeah, a couple other things. So this plate, because I didn't want to pay a machine shop or buy a lathe or anything fancy, we just come on. Well, it can stay, I guess. I took my pilot bearing, release bearing, traced it, and then drew a circle inside of here, because then I flipped it, lined the circle up, traced this diameter, and cut the center out. Before I go any further, I probably ought to make a video of what I'm about to do. This is my slave cylinder adapter plate in the flesh and blood. So I started with this guy, and I'm going to put him on here. I got studs I made out of all thread and nuts, and so I'll bolt the bearing retainer on with 2 bolts. There are 2 studs in this side, and tighten her down. Then this guy would sit on the studs. I got everything timed here. I got a top and an arrow. So then this guy, oh, stud. And stud. Then this guy goes on. Then I was going to bolt this on. But the problem is, so I got my alignment marks on him too, that, well, not only do the nuts hit, but that's going to be addressed. I got to just grind the nuts and cut the ends of the studs off. Not a big deal. That's why the studs aren't in there though, so you can see the next step. So pull the studs, then we'll put these bolts on. It keeps it from teetering. So now we put our plate back on. line up the bolt holes, kind of like that. And then our top matches our top. Then, when you put this thing on, only the outside contacts it. I didn't like that. I think it'd be okay, but I didn't want to take the chance of cracking this housing because it's pushing down and on this recess here. That's all your contact surface. I wanted to have a washer inside of here. Enter washer. So I just plasma torch. Well, I hole sawed the center of this because it's hard to make a smooth ID. Then I traced, this thing. My NV4500 slave was the perfect diameter to trace this outside of the washer. Then I laid it on here, timed it with this mark, and then marked my 2 bolt holes. Then you put this guy on, and look at this. When I hit my timing marks with him, here, see the timing mark there? Boom. Hit that. Now, we got a gap. As you cannot clearly see, but see how smooth that is? It's bearing down on my washer, which is about perfect. Because this whole center, this is what I'm concerned about right here. I want that to contact something firmly. And that's what we got. So this thing, using a... Oh, where's it at? Hang on one sec. Alright, adjusted camera angle. Using an 1.5-inch hole saw. Well, that sucks. Anyhow, 1.5-inch hole saw. That is the perfect diameter to slide over top of this thing. And can you see anything of what I'm doing? No, you can't. How about now? That hole saw, one side sharp and one side smooth. You got to put the smooth side down because otherwise the sharp side hits this kind of radius here, and that really helps pilot that thing almost perfectly, so I can't screw it up that bad. So that's kind of exciting. That was a terrible camera angle. I apologize. I won't do that again this time. Anyhow, now that I goofed everything up by holding that, let me find my top. Alright, here's top, top, top. That is about as good as I think I can get for making a decent bracket to hold this guy. And what that means is we are officially free and clear to use the dmax pressure plate, which is great news. I don't have to worry about clutch slippage or anything of that nature, and all I gotta buy is a friction disc for the 6.5. So we're killing it. Last hurdle I think is gonna be that bell housing. That's my only other concern. But you know, all that said, this guy plus this guy. Oh boy, you're not looking again. This guy plus this guy plus this guy. You know, if there's a snap ring in here. These are the exact same height. Actually, that one's still, you know, holy cow. This guy's a little bit low at this point. So, if I have to, I can always shim that. But it's not going to be too tall, which is awesome. So, we're doing good so far, I think. The real test of time is going to be whenever we put her in and see if the clutch remains engaged or if it bears up tight to the pressure plate, and then you know, we have a bad day. But anyhow, I just wanted to go through all that before I weld this on. This one here, I didn't have a hole saw big enough, so I did torch them with the plasma cutter and then just ream it out with a little flap disc for your drill. It turned out okay, but now having my wonky looking washer on top, you won't even see that. So I'm gonna put, I don't know, it doesn't need much. I'm probably just gonna tack, 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 and tack and be done. The other thing, the reason I had this guard on here is because there's a little gap here as well. This thing spins freely. Oh, you can see it over in this corner here. See the green? So I'm just gonna weld it how it sits, and it'll probably be okay. I don't know. This might go terribly, it might go really well. I'm hoping skunk really well. We got the skunk trying to stay high. Alright, I'm gonna weld this thing. We're gonna bolt it together one more time, and then I'll use my fancy pants pilot tool here to take this, put him on, and then we'll flip this guy on end like so, and it pilots both of these perfectly. This this slave cylinder, I can't remember what it cost. Maybe $50, was the best purchase for this thing I could have ever accidentally bought. I think I may end up using this line. If this is the same size as that, I'm pulling this line off, and then I got this long extension line to come out through my bell housing, and it'll wrap around and go up, and I'll just buy the 98 line for the master cylinder, and now it'll be cake. So I gotta push them roll pins out tonight too and see what they look like. I was gonna return this, but I think with the amount of use I got out of it and tearing it apart 5 times, I think it's worth it to me to keep it. And I certainly got my money's worth out of how many times I drew a circle with it. So, you know, that's pretty cool. More to come. Stay tuned. Alright, we got an exciting day today. My adapter plate is done. And we're going to do the final assembly on the transmission tonight. And by that, I mean the input bearing retainer, not the transmission. So I made these high precision fancy studs that, you know, I cut a piece all thread to length and then peen the threads so they can't spin that much, and then precision machine these nuts so that they clear underneath my adapter plate. So I just hosed all this down with brake cleaner in case I got any dirt in it in the precision machining process, and I hosed down my input shaft for the same reasons. Then I threw some gear oil on the input shaft bearing so that that doesn't have to run dry at all. Apparently, you're supposed to run fancy oil in these NV4500s or they'd smoke the synchros. Well, I think me, a long time ago, didn't do that. And I still haven't smoked the synchros. So I'll do some reading to see what I actually need for gear oil, and then probably put regular gear oil in it because this is a budget build. We'll see. And there's already gear oil in it. Alright, we'll move you down to the transmission so you can see what's going on. I got my phone on an extension cord because it's almost dead. So we gotta move the extension cord. Alright, actually, can you see from right here? You can see the dog. That's cool. Alright. Here's our transmission. Here's our Harbor Freight Vulcan welder camera stand. A closer look at the dog. What are you doing, dog, huh? And then our Harbor Freight flashlight camera mount. How's that look? Oh, hey, move. Come here. Come on. A full look of the dog eclipse. Keep going. There you go. Oh, that's decent. Okay. So, we'll take this guy. Our two non-adapter plate bolts. Oh, look at all that stuff. There's all varnish in here from the new input shaft and bearing retainer 5 years ago. I think that's good for the synchronizers though, so I'm going to leave that in there as much as you can. Put this thing so this little notch here is up. And then forget which way this thing goes. Okay. These are our bolts. 1. And 2. I siliconed this last time because 1, I was 19 and thought you had to silicone every seal, and 2, I didn't want it leaking inside the transmission, but it didn't really matter because the rear main seal did that for me. Well, in the bell housing, I mean. And then, now looking at how tight of a fit this is, I don't really think that you need to do that. Now, dog, you take one to the nose. Doesn't make any difference? No. I don't remember it being that snug. Looks like the side get stand to go in. Don't worry, I'm wailing on this for the sacked out rubber mallet, so it's not really doing much. Boy, she's snug. With my finger. enough. I like this. It went right in without that input shaft in there. Now it's getting snug. Let me take it back out. There we go. Covering dog hair. That's good for it. Oh, that's right. There's this freaking ring in here that you gotta line up. Right there. Oh, I don't want to take this back out. If you look straight in at your transmission, you'll see what I'm talking about, though. That's kind of important. I don't think it's in there either. Well, it looks better based on the stick out of the bearing and the stick out of the cap. Let's see, we'll try it again. Much better. Alright, I'll put these bolts in the wrong blocking again because I didn't check. Dog. There you go. That time it actually seated with the mallet. So there is a chance if you use something more persuasive than a mallet that... What? I know. You could do some damage. So, step one, install this thingy. Good and snug. Step 2, install the bell housing. And this is the very first fit. So you guys are gonna see just as well as I will how well this thing fits. I'm only gonna put 3 bolts in it snugly because this all has to come back out. Because my next step is to test fit the bell housing to the engine block, which requires installing the flywheel pressure plate and then what else? Picking the motor up, turning it around so I can get it all the bell housing bolts, and then once I know that the bell housing clears, or what I have to do to make the bell housing clear, I can also measure the depth to the what do you call it? The clutch fingers, and make sure that my slave cylinder is also going to hit nicely in there and have a decent stroke on it. Then if all that goes to plan, I guess I'll have to pull my input shaft again, make a bell housing spacer and put a Dodge input shaft in it, and get the input shaft turned down to 059 for GM. Boy, she's close. This was about an exact fit on the bench. Now it looks like something less than an exact fit. I might have to move them holes out just a little bit. Yeah, it ain't gonna go. Oh, did I speak too soon? I think it's gonna go. It may never come back off, but it's gonna go in. Seems like a rubber mallet job. Alright, let me just adjust these holes ever so slightly, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, I'm back to you. Here's what we got. That one side just had a little burr on it. There's just enough to prevent that plate from slipping on. Look how tight there's not a whole lot of motion in there. Which is good, because that NV4500 slave, after this thing's all said and done, it'll have less slop in it, and hopefully be a little more centered than the factory. So I guess that's not a bad thing, because then, you know, your ability for error on installation is considerably less. On my final go around, I'm going to Loctite all this too, but just to make sure that it all works. And not have to fight it on the way back out. Uh-oh, that's not a good feeling. What are you doing? Did I get the wrong size wrench? No. Oh, maybe just pulling it down on the threads? I don't know. Let's put an extension on there. Really feed it to town. I bet you that thread on the stud must have spun a little bit. It sticks out just a tiny bit. I don't think we're worried about that though. Now we take our slave, point him out. There it is. 1 and 2. Now this looks deceptive. It really looks like it's going to contact the flywheel. But if you hold it over here, it exits the bell housing. So, I don't know. Once we put an extension line on it, then it should be fine. Let me grab my fancy jig. So this is that NV4500 slave that I disassembled. It goes right on the end of this thing and squares it up nicely. It's like a clutch alignment tool except for the master cylinder, or slave cylinder rather. I've been struggling with my words this week. So, something that was not foreseen is now foreseen. Is it my bolts? Oh, maybe they don't. Am I stupid? Keep going. No, they tightened up. I was worried the bolts are too long. I never cut them down to fit. Well, that's unfortunate. That's way out in no man's land. Way out in no man's land. Alright, check this out. That's pretty easy to tell that if you look at the bottom, you look at the top. Well, maybe not that easy to tell. It's not centered, is what I'm trying to say. And it's got a gap here. And I'm thinking that my bolts bottomed out. I'm thinking that my bolts bottomed out before they could tighten down and it started pushing this. So I might have to cut those bolts down or put a washer on them. So I'll try again. Alright, well, you get the gist. I'm gonna keep playing with this and see what I can do. Okay, final picture. There she be. It's a lot better. It was just, this bolt here was a little bit too long. Permanent, temporary, permanent solution. Add a second washer to it. So, once I take this off again, I'll run her in, cut the bolts down, make certain that they're not running into that bearing retainer. And it's pretty good. I looked down my little alignment scope. It's off by a couple thousandths, but I think it'll be alright. We'll see. If it makes bad noises when I push the clutch in, I'll know. This is another hurdle. I don't know what I need for a line for that yet. The NV4500 is a different style fitting, so I don't know if I can modify that one to work or if I need a different one or what. So more to come on that. I can't really find a dmax clutch line, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Last thing I want to do tonight, it's 7 o'clock. I gotta be up at quarter to 4, like every day. Geez, first time holding the phone sideways in a while. But I want to get the clutch and pressure plate on tonight, and then maybe tomorrow night go for a run, come back, pick the engine up, turn it around on the stand and crib it, and then we'll measure. We got a couple different measurements to take. We can measure from this face down to here and see where we sit and make sure that this pressure plate sits somewhere within the travel of this. So we can fully collapse it, measure it, leave it out, measure it, make sure it'll stroke the pressure plate. And then also we can measure from the back here to the face of this after the bell housing's off. And then once we're in there, we can do the same. We can measure from here to here, and that might be an easier measurement than from the block face to this. So that, and we can measure the stick out of this, make sure it's going to work. But I think it will, because it's a GM. I don't know. We'll see. If not, I'll buy a Dodge one and turn it down. So, moving on. Stay tuned.